Hello, this is Sally McNally, the Irish midwife, and welcome back to the Bleedin Truth.
And this is Bridget, Sally's daughter. So today we're getting into more of Sally's crazy stories. And I want to know, Sally, how did you end up spending time in Saudi Arabia as a midwife?
Well, I had, do you remember from last week's podcast? I had wanted to go to Ethiopia, but the nun in our group got that visa. But I had developed a kind of a feeling like I wanted to go, I wanted to do something somewhere else. So um, I contacted this nursing agency, their travel nursing agency, and the first place they sent me was Saudi Arabia. And so they sent me to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and I delivered babies there for the Saudi military. It was a military hospital, and I was a very, very busy midwife.
Wow. And how did your family feel about you going that far from Dublin?
I think they were terrified, of course. They were like, why there, of all places? Um, and I guess they were supportive because they knew I wanted to deliver as many babies as possible. And I had the traveling bug, and there was no stopping me. I had to do it. And it was very interesting. It was such a wonderful experience. And I'm so happy
Hmm.
that I have that memory, of Saudi in my
How
life.
long did you end up going there for?
Well, every year they would, my contract would be up and I would say, I'm going home, I'm going home. But of course, I'd renew my contract and I ended up staying for five
Wow.
years. Yeah, it was really interesting. Um, it was also very scary at times and terrifying, even. I saw some things that I wish I could forget. And I made some friends that I still love to this day. I met some fabulous people over there in Saudi Arabia.
Wow. Where did you live when you were there?
Well, we were the group that I was with. Of course, I was with a bunch of international nurses and midwives, and we had to stay on a western compound where it was walled in. It was like a little village, and some of us would live in apartments, and some others would live in houses. The married people would live in houses and stuff. Um, and it was really nice. They'd have swimming pools there and
Oh, wow.
armed guards on the
Oh,
gate.
Jesus.
Um, and they even had a little shop and stuff. And if you wanted to go out of that little compound, you'd have to go in a group. A single woman couldn't be out on her own. She should be with another married couple or with a group of people. And then also, you couldn't drive because you were a woman. So they would, maybe organize a little bus or a van to bring a few of us into town. And sometimes there was a car that you could hire. It was kind of like a little taxi or Uber
Uber.
nowadays, kind of like an Uber thing, yeah. And they would come and they were like the trusted like ones that could look after us, and they would bring us to where we were going, and
Wow.
they'd wait and bring you back.
That sounds
Yeah,
really restrictive.
it was very restrictive,
Yeah.
but you know what? It was really fun too. We had there was different compounds, right? And some compounds, your friends or your boyfriends or your, friend would be living in a different compound, and sometimes there might be parties in a different compound, and you couldn't like go as a bunch of girls through the gate with the armed guards and be like checking your IDs and stuff. You couldn't just do that to go to a party. So honestly, we found our way around these rules. I often went to a party in the trunk of the
Oh my
car.
gosh.
Hiding, yes. And we'd be all dressed up in our finery and we'd step out of the boot of the car in our black habaya. It was a black habaya. It was like a big long black cloak, and we'd take the black cloak off and walk into the party, and it was a lot of fun. There wasn't anything like a nightclub or cinemas that you could go to. So the Westerners, we kind of had to make our own fun, including our own booze and stuff like that. There was no alcohol to be bought in the country. And if you wanted to drink alcohol, you have to make it
Oh,
or
I
buy
see.
it.
Okay. Real quick, I have a question. So you have to wear the more traditional clothing there, right? But if you're going to like a party organized by, your fellow Westerners, do you still have to stay in your clothing, or did you say that you'd be able to take off your cloaks and stuff?
Yeah, once we were inside those little walled compounds, we could kind of like be normal.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so we'd wear our
Wow.
like mini skirts or shorts or whatever. But once you came out of there, you couldn't be showing skin.
Jeez.
Oh no, we had to wear scarves on our heads and a long black type cloak or coat that covered your whole body. It was like a big black bag, and it was uh,
Mhm.
it was very, very strict, and if you were showing skin, there you would be followed by the religious police, and they were actually religious police over there,
Oh, wow.
and they were usually led by a guy called a Matawa, and he was the priest,
Mhm.
and it was very strict. So I know of a few stories where. There was one lady, and she was uh, showing her skin, her legs, and Matawa came in and he started beating her legs with a big stick, and her husband came to rescue her, and he pushed the Matawa, and the Matawa fell down, and I guess he hit his head, and he was injured.
Mhm.
But they took the husband off to
Oh,
jail.
wow.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Holy
Yeah,
smokes.
yeah. But there's reasons because it may be a little different. The rules might be a bit more relaxed now, but at that time it was so strict. I remember we went into one shop, a bunch of us, a bunch of
Mhm.
young nurses, midwives, and we had our habayas on, but it was a very busy shop, and it was all of a sudden it was full of people, and we were all getting all squashed,
Oh,
and it felt really uncomfortable. And one of the girls was like, "No, no!" I could hear her shouting, "No, no!" And she was like, "Get out of here, quick!" And we all rushed out to the outside, and we looked at the back of her habaya, and there was sperm all over it. Somebody had,
oh,
yeah.
oh,
I
shoot.
know. I apologize.
Jeez.
I know that's
I did not
really,
expect
really
that. Oh my gosh.
because men and women cannot mix together,
Wow.
they unless they're married, there's no like regular socializing. And
Ooh,
I'm sorry if there's people listening, who are from Saudi Arabia. I know you're not all like that, of course, and this is just
yeah.
my experience and my bleeding truth. So please don't get offended if you're listening and you're from Saudi. I
Wow.
I have lots of great friends there, and I totally respect the country too.
That's
It's just
wild.
rules. There's certain rules,
Mhm.
and you know, we we were taught that was the first thing going to Saudi. Do not break the rules.
How old were you when you went?
Let's see what age. I must have been coming up on my 30. I remember turning 30. Oh yeah, that was a thing. Um, there was more more men over there than women in the western parts where
Mhm.
we in our little compounds. And I remember my 30th birthday party. It was me celebrating with like about 12 men, and they were so sweet, trying to like make a little party for me. Um, and I was hoping a few of the nurses would come because it was really awkward, just me there.
Oh gosh.
But The nurses, they went to something different. They didn't know that I was like going to have a party. But anyway, that was my 30th birthday party.
Holy
These
crap.
12 awkward men and me, but it was okay.
And that's actually wild because you had me at what age?
I was 37 when I had you. 36.
36. So that wasn't like that long. You were in Saudi Arabia, not
Mm,
that like long
that's
before
right.
meeting
Yes.
dad, and
Yes.
yeah, that's kind of wild.
That's true, isn't
That's
it?
really wild.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to, you said the Westerners throwing parties and learning how to make their own alcohol. Is that, would you guys call that moonshine, or what kind of alcohol?
Yeah, we used to call it Habibi. No, what was it? Sadiq. That's what we used to call it. It was a code name for it. Sadiq, his
Mhm.
friend.
Oh,
It was our friend. And one of my friends, he had a still in the desert where they used to make this,
a still.
a still is like the contraption that would make pure
Oh
alcohol.
gosh. Okay.
And yes, and this pure alcohol, then he would take it and sell it to different people in the different compounds, and then they would take it and make, liqueurs and make punch
Mhm.
and stuff like that with it. And it was really, really strong.
Gosh.
I know some people whose eyesight to this day, I'm sure, it's no good because it was so strong. Blind drunk.
Oh.
Now I know why they called it blind drunk. But anyway, sometimes we'd try our hand at making wine.
Mhm.
We'd get fruit juice and sugar and yeast and
Yeah.
stuff. And if you didn't get the mix just right, it would get like too strong and explode the bottle. I had a
Oh.
wee cat. I had a wee cat, and she was in my apartment. I had all these bottles of wine
Oh
made,
geez.
and I guess it got too hot or something. But I came home, and like a big bunch of them had exploded, and the poor cat, her eyes were huge, like, what the
Oh
hell?
my god. Was the cat okay?
The poor girl. And then we had like big barrels where we'd make beer.
Mhm.
So we'd try our hand. I mean, I was no good at it, but we'd have contests to see who had made the worst. I think it was contest for the worst wine.
Wow.
But we needed to make our own fun over there,
Mhm.
Bridget. It was like, uh, not that I'm a drinker at all now. I don't drink at all now. I always say I've had enough, and you can see why.
What would happen if you got caught with that or making it? Was that a problem?
You would go to jail. Yeah,
Oh
you would
jeez.
go to jail. One of our friends went missing. He was put in jail for bringing whiskey into the country illegally. He brought like a few cases of it
Oh.
in, and they caught him and they put him in jail. And when they found him, his friends, when they found him, they had beaten his feet so badly that he couldn't walk for a while.
Jeez.
That was one of the punishments. Actually, one of my friends went to jail over there. Can I tell you that story really
Yeah,
quick?
yeah.
Am I getting off
No,
topic or anything?
you're doing great. This is wild.
I had this friend, Tara. I remember her name. I don't know if I'm allowed to use people's names. Came from England, and she was West Indian and English. And she was such a darling girl. I loved her.
Mhm.
And she was a great midwife. But lo and behold, didn't she fall in love with a Saudi man? And this was a big no no, huge big no no. And we were all like warning her, don't go, don't do it, don't do this, don't do that. And she was like, I love him. And he was a wee bit younger than her. But anyway, they were having this wild affair, She couldn't help herself. She loved him.
Wow.
And they got caught. They got caught by the religious
Oh
police.
wow.
And the first thing we knew about it was she was missing from work. And so we started calling all the hospitals in the area to see if she was there. Couldn't find her in the apartment building. And then somebody said maybe they caught them together. Maybe she's in jail.
Oh, wow.
So I went to the local jail where they would have put Westerners, right? Um, and I brought with me some food and some clothes because they don't like give you like regular food. Your friends and relatives have to throw food over the
Oh,
wall to
wow.
you. Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. That's the way it was when I was there. This is my bleeding truth. I don't know. Hopefully, it's better now. But so I went and I remember walking in. It was terrible, sad, um, and they met me at the door, and I wore my hospital uniform because on the arm it had that it was the Saudi military hospital, and I thought, well, that'll show them that I'm, on a good side of things, that I wasn't
Mhm.
just anybody, that I actually worked
Yeah.
for the country. But they just took the bag of food off me and the clothes. And I said, can I? And they were like, no. They took it off me and they said, go down there, in Arabic, walk down there. So I walked down this pathway, and it was like, there was like a little moat between the pathway and these cages on both sides
Oh,
of me, right? So there was like big, huge cages, and in each cage there was about 20, 30 women. And they were all shouting and crying out in different languages. I could hear like Filipino, Tagalog. I could hear some Western voices. I could hear African voices. It was like a nightmare. And there was like about six gauges in this area. And I just was walking down shouting, Tara, Tara, are you there, Tara? And I can remember seeing the little fingers coming through the cages, and it was really thick, wiry stuff. And it was really hard to see their faces. And then I could hear her little voice saying, Sally, Sally, get me out of here, get me out of here. And I stood there and I couldn't reach to touch her. And she said, please help me, please help me. And she said, look what they did to me. And she turned around, she pulled her dress down, she showed me her back. And I can still see it to this day. Her back was black and blue,
oh,
where they'd given her 50 lashes because she was, of course, breaking the law, right?
wow.
And that was the last I saw of Tara. That was the last I saw of her. There was nothing I could do. I was begging and pleading with the people in the hospital, and even Western people that I went to who were in charge of us. They just shook their head back and forth. There's nothing we can do. That's the rules.
Oh,
But
wow.
I heard from people who knew her that she was shipped back to. Oh, they had um, they had shaved her head as well. Yeah, and his head. That's what we heard.
Was
He
he
had been
also in jail, or was it just her?
the two of them were put in jail.
Dang.
Yeah, and she was shipped back to England, and they stamped. In Arabic, they put a stamp on her passport that translated as prostitute.
What?
Yeah. And she went from the airport to a psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. That was the
Jesus.
last I heard of her. And if you ever hear this, Tara, I want you to know I often thought about you, girl. Send you me love.
Wow, Mom.
Yeah. It's a tough world out there.
And how
To
long were you still there in Saudi Arabia after that?
Oh, I was probably there more 4 years after that. I tell you, the longer I stayed, the better I got at it. Getting around the rules and, helping the patients. It's all about the patients, really, for us. Because all we had was just a little bit of restriction, having to cover up and move in groups. And they paid us really well, they paid us
Yeah.
tax free. So the money was great. They paid for your airfare, they paid for your food, they paid for your apartment. There wasn't. So we had this great chance that we could make, some money, but the patients, their lives were so hard. I remember, walking through the wards sometimes, and yeah, they would like have big wards with a few women in a big area, and they wouldn't be talking to each other. The women were like quiet. They'd be just, covered up in the habaya and the yashmaks, and just a breast maybe sticking out with the baby on the breast. And it was just like so subdued. Like here in the hospital, there's like laughter and music, and women can
Yeah.
have birth plans, and it's just so wonderful. And here in America, where I work, the women are the luckiest women in the world, that they can have such a beautiful birth if they want. They can plan it, and they can have the people that they want there, and it's just so wonderful. um, Over there, there was some really great people who I learned so much from, the
Hmm.
work that went on in the labor. But sometimes the women would come in and their health wasn't so good to begin with. They may have had like 10 babies already, and now here they are on their 11th baby, and their hemoglobin is down like
Whoa.
5 or 6 to start
Yeah.
out. And if they have any little bit of a bleed during the delivery, then they're like in real trouble. Yeah, so it was. And some of those women were coming from the desert, coming in to have their baby in the hospital, coming from a desert, like living in a tent,
Like far
basically.
away from the hospital too? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have a lot of memories about the patients. They were so that you just wanted to help them so much, and there was so much to do that sometimes your time to clock out from your shift would come and go, and you wouldn't even think of it because there was like so much to do. You might
Hmm.
put in like an 18-hour day if it was a short staff. And I often had days where I'd deliver like 8 or 9 babies in that one shift.
Wow. Just
Yeah,
just as a midwife, like as on
just
your
a
own,
midwife.
or with a was it a big staff as well, or
Yeah, there was a big staff. It was like run by Western midwives, and so mostly it was British and Irish,
hmm.
and a few from different parts of Europe. We had some Filipino
Hmm.
nurses with us, and we had like a various group.
How come there was so many out of country nurses and midwives and staff even? Was it because of the education in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, it might have been that. Yeah, they didn't really let the women work
Right.
over there. And
Yeah.
then there was the problem that the men don't want another man to touch their wife.
Yeah.
So
There's a
yeah,
problem there.
so over there the men can have 4 wives,
Whoa.
so it's a man's world. Um, but so they would want women. So a midwife was a really happy medium, of course. So they'd stock up on midwives to
Hmm.
come and deliver the babies.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember this patient. When I came on duty, and our job as midwives, we would look after just like here, the low risk women. For the most part, our patients would be as low risk as possible. Like, say, if you delivered a woman and she had a first or second degree laceration, we could do that. We could suture our own episiotomies. But if it was like a third or fourth degree laceration, you would call in one of the obstetricians to help uh, fix that. But I came on duty this morning. There was a big fuss in the hallway, and men were shouting at each other. And it was an obstetrician and a father who had just had a baby, and she had a fourth degree laceration, and the Yeah, I know, it was bad, and
Yeah.
the doctor grabbed me and he said, "The other midwife won't do it, and, you have to go in there, she's bleeding, you have to go in and help that woman."
Gee.
He won't let me go in and help his wife. So I said, "I've never sutured a 4th degree laceration." And he said, "Just leave the door open and I'll talk you through it." And I
Whoa.
often wondered how that poor woman, how her bowels were. I hope it all went well. I did my best. But we did it that way. That was
Yeah.
what we had to do because he was shouting there was no way. And the doctor was saying, "Your wife will die if you leave her like that." And he said, "Then she will die. Then she will
Oh,
die."
wow.
Yeah, it was like that.
That must have been so traumatic for those women. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Poor women.
Um, Appreciative of getting to grow up where I did.
Yes, Bridget should. It's a great place here, isn't it? You know, you can be free as well. Being a woman here, you can be free. You can own a house. You can walk down the street and not be, hassled. You can call the police and say that man is abusing me or hassling me or whatever. Um, I remember when I went over there, before I was, streetwise, I had to learn the hard way. But I, I remember walking. It was just a short area outside the compound. I thought I'll just walk to that market because it had some vegetables or something that I wanted to try. And I was thinking, sure, what harm is it? Just a wee walk outside. I'll be fine. I'll come right back. And I dressed in my habaya and my scarf. And off I went, dee 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 dee, down the road. And the next thing, it was like he appeared out of nowhere. There was a man driving a really beautiful Mercedes, and he was like whistling out the window, and he had a big fistful of money out the window because I guess women just don't walk on the street on their own like that, right? But
Oh,
he presumed he could just, buy me. Maybe he presumed I was a prostitute.
because you were on
Um,
your own, maybe.
I
Yeah.
was terrified, yeah. And he was like coming up really close to the car, and he was like, I'm sure he was saying some really horrible things to me. And he was like, look at the money, don't you want the money? And I picked up a big rock,
Oh,
and I got close to the car, and I just scraped the side of his car, and then he drove away really fast,
oh,
which was great.
he learned his lesson, hopefully.
I hope
Probably
so.
not. Wow.
Him and his lovely Mercedes.
Dang.
Yeah. But I mean, that was minor to some of the things later that I witnessed and experienced.
Well, thank you for introducing us to this era of your life in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
I swear about most of the things you just covered, I've never even heard. So I'm sure if you're implying there's more stories, there's going to be some really exciting and hopefully, not too terrible stories to come.
Yeah.
Probably some sad
Yeah.
ones and some really good ones as well.
Oh, yes. Lots of good ones. I had a great time. Yes. My life has been um, really fun up to this. I feel really lucky. You're the best part, baby.
Love.
Love. Well, thanks a million for listening to the Bleeding Truth, and hope you'll come back again for more.
Yes, thanks a million. Make sure to like and subscribe for more of Sally McNally's Irish midwife content, and we'll see you in the next one.